Name, Tang Zexian. Sex, male. Age, 22 years old. Occupation, Police Department of the Metropolitan Police Department. This is the general situation of Tang Zi after he came to this world. But fortunately, there was no change beside this handsome white and handsome face. Even the first name was changed from the first name to the last name, with the name Xianyi added at the back. It is exactly the same as the self in the previous life, otherwise, Tang Zi will worry about whether he will develop schizophrenia. After all, I have to wear an unfamiliar face every day, so I don't know if the san value will drop. Tang Zi. And it is always easier for people to accept the self who has traveled through the parallel world. In his previous life, he was an art teacher and a single dog. He usually watched anime and reasoning works when he had nothing to do, but as soon as he woke up, he traveled to this world. To be honest, after Tang Zi learned about the situation in this world, he couldn't be more satisfied with the profession he chose in this world. As a police officer in the professional group, in this world, he is simply a scholar. Myself in this world graduated from the Faculty of Law of Tohoku University. When I was a student at the University of Tokyo, I passed the National Civil Service exam once, and was also the chief graduate of the Police University. It can be said to be a career group. Simply. Here, Tang Zi is going to call crazy for himself in the parallel world. You must know that this is the Class I civil servant exam in the Neon Kingdom that only very few people can pass. We asked Mr. Squirrel to hold a chestnut for us. Of the total number of 220,000 police officers, only a mere 500 are in the professional group. By comparison, we can understand how difficult it is to pass such an exam. And the other world did it himself. It can be said that the future development has been guaranteed. If it's unclear, the wise Jianwu police inspector in the Kind Aichi teenagers casebook, this boss is from the career group. Of course, judging from the speed of promotion, most of the unreliable Gunma County police officers in Detective Conan are also in the career group. It can be said that as a professional group, the starting point is high and the promotion is fast. Almost all professional groups are senior bureaucrats. Even if you are a police officer like Yamamura, you will be promoted faster than the quasi-professional and non-professional groups. After only 3 months of junior cadre courses and 9 months of practice in the police department, they can be promoted to the police department. Such a winner in life completely dilutes Tang Zi's restlessness after transmigration. The memory in his brain also allows Tang Zi to deal with familiar people and affairs with ease. It can be said that although he has passed through, he is in a good situation and does not need to worry about his livelihood. You must know that the neon economy in the 1990s was not very prosperous. The decade after the Plaza Accord in the 1990s was even called the Lost Decade. It can be said that when the predecessor caught up with the worst period, he embraced the most iron job. In Neon, the salary of the police is very generous. Even the rookie's salary is higher than that of the general club members. If it is a high school degree, it is about 190,000, a short-term college, similar to a junior college, is 200,000, a university, undergraduate and above, is 230,000, and the monthly salary of a general club member is 198,000. And this is only the first year after joining the company. After that, the monthly salary will increase year by year at a rate of 7,00010,000 per year. In addition, 2 bonuses are issued every year, and the accumulated amount of the 2 bonuses is about 5 months' salary. That is to say, a new police officer with salary and bonus can earn nearly 4 million yen in 1 year. For a young boy who has graduated from university and has not been beaten by society, he has basically avoided the future social beating. And the reason why Tang Zi worked hard was also because of the economic downturn. Without the tradition of his parents offering sacrifices to the sky, his hometown in the parallel world is in Kamikawacho, Kamikawagon, Hokkaido, and has been running a hot spring hotel for generations. The grandfather's surname was Tang Ming Shao. Later, in order to marry his grandmother, he agreed to his mother-in-law's condition to join the family, and the two inherited the Hot Spring Hotel. Maybe it's because the first surname is Tang? Anyway, when the old man changed his name, he didn't seem to have any pressure at all, so he added a ze in Tang Xiao's middle and became Tang's Xiao. There is no difference. And the years are also a bit different. It seems that Tang Zi in this world was born earlier than him, almost a year older. It can only be said that the difference in the world, but fortunately, his parents have not changed. According to Tang Zi's own memory, he was originally a grandma and a neon person in the world, and finally married to his hometown, but he did not expect that this world was left by his grandfather. Maybe it's because in the grandmother's dowry in this world, there is an ancestral one who can't take the hot springs with them? In the past few years, the hot springs of Tang Zi's family were a lot of money. Because it relies on the foothills of Des Asosan National Park, it can be said that there were a lot of people who came to play in the past 2 years, and they spent a lot of money. But the good times didn't last long. In the previous year when he was 2 years old, the neon economy jumped off the building, and because of this, the hot spring hotel run by the Tangzhou family became more and more difficult. Even though my parents are both stable and responsible people, they usually don't spend any money except for daily expenses, but the hot springs have been unable to make ends meet a few days ago. It has now been 6 years. Even today in 1996, the family's hot spring business has not improved much. During the peak period of the past 2 years, there was some income, but it was barely enough. After all, a lot of people have lost their jobs, and many have committed suicide by jumping off buildings. Who would be interested in taking a hot spring? In this era, because neon adopts a fixed exchange rate against the US dollar, 360:1, US dollar, makes consumption extremely high, whether it is meat or vegetables are very expensive. Many men choose to carry debts alone for the sake of their families, and there are countless families facing divorce, and there are many pan-pans from good families. So even if the family grows some vegetables and raises some poultry, they live a very frugal life. After all, Hokkaido is not a tourist destination for later generations, and with a small population, it is not comparable to prosperous places like Tokyo. And the parallel world himself also began to study hard at that time, and a lot of family money was spent on him. After all, neon in this era implements happy education. If you want to get admitted to a good university, you need to go to a private school, because some knowledge is not taught in high school at all, and it is necessary to be admitted to a university. The predecessor was originally considered to be at the bottom of the outstanding students, but after the family crisis, he suddenly woke up and turned into a hard-working and conscientious student. Later, with the support and bonus of his family, he successfully graduated from the Faculty of Law of Dongda University. After that, he passed the Class I exam and successfully became an elite of the professional group. Now, Tang Zi can finally come to support the family. From my memory, I know that I am much stronger than him in this world. I have set a goal since high school, and finally completed the goal in one fell swoop, and even started to support this family. But I didn't expect that it would suddenly be replaced by me. I don't know if the other party has crossed into my own world. In this regard, Tang Zi can only hope silently in his heart, so that even if the two of them travel to a parallel world, they are still their own parents after all. And by virtue of the memory obtained directly after transmigration, the other self should also be able to obtain his own memory. In that case, it must be enough to be a translator to make life better. The reason why the predecessor chose the profession of police is also because the treatment of the police is so good these days. In addition to the above-mentioned salary, if they are police officers who do not have a family, the neon police require them to live in the single dormitory assigned to them. The water and electricity bills in the dormitory are free, and there is a free canteen with plenty of delicious food, which means that you can eat and live. This means that if you are a single police officer, your daily expenses are close to zero. UU reading www.uuganshu.com In addition, every 2 years, you can get a brand new suit for free, which is tailor-made and made of high-quality materials. It is definitely not comparable to those inferior stalls. In other words, as long as you don't spend too much money, a police officer in his 30s will have 15 million or 15 million in savings. Depending on the type of police, the related duties can also receive a variety of allowances, such as patrolling allowances for patrol officers and traffic rectification allowances for traffic police. As for the criminal police, there are more. If you go to the scene in the middle of the night to investigate the scene, you will have a paging allowance and a night special operation allowance. You said, in this case, can the predecessor be an incarnation of the of learning without risking his life and be admitted to the police professional group? Thanks for watching, please subscribe. There was a lot of traffic, and people kept rushing to their respective destinations. 6 years have passed in Tokyo at this moment, and the turmoil seems to have disappeared long ago, but the further regions are still suffering from the aftermath of the turmoil. After his predecessor went through 3 months of study at the police university, Tang Ziyi came over, and he was relieved of his training. Today is the second day of the time travel, and he will officially report to the Metropolitan Police Department. At this moment, he will join the Metropolitan Police Department after 9 months of internship at the police station. At that time, his starting police rank was the police department. With full of anticipation and a little excitement, Tang Ziyi went to the Metropolitan Police Department to search for the first class of forced criminals to search the 3 departments. This is where he will be doing his internship. During these 9 months, he followed his seniors to study, and even conducted on-site investigations if a case occurred. This is also the reason for his excitement. He was a fan of mystery novels in his previous life, but now he didn't expect to actually be able to get in touch with these. For a while, he didn't even know whether he was excited or scared. But perhaps because of the parallel world, Tang Ziyi found that the police system here has changed a little. In the previous life, except for the internship stage, the professional group would not appear on the scene after turning into a regular. Generally, those young police departments with their nostrils upturned in general neon dramas are basically from the professional group. They will not be in charge of the scene, but will sit in the office and work. Because Tang Ziyi was a fan of reasoning in his previous life, he also came into contact with a lot of Neon's works, so he was only familiar with them. Originally thought that after 9 months of implementation, he would not appear again for a lifetime, but Tang Ziyi found out after searching the memory in his mind. The Neon police system in this world seems to be slightly different from what I know. The promotion system of the Neon police officer in the previous life is very strange. Your promotion has nothing to do with your ability to solve crimes, but only with your test scores. The promotion speed of the 3 groups is very different. Not only that, there is no special promotion channel. That is to say, the case is solved, and the merit is credited, but you want to take this to get promoted? Sorry, no play. But this world is different. Even in the non-professional group, those with outstanding abilities can be promoted based on their merits. Even if there is an invisible ceiling in promotion, and even after being promoted to a certain level, only the police rank has no real power, but it is much better than the strange system in the previous life. At least capable people have better treatment in terms of wages and so on. And the professional team members are not like the previous life, they can only participate in the field work during the internship. In the memory of the predecessor, many professional groups will also lead teams to handle cases on the spot. For those with excellent ability, the promotion is even more exaggerated, and they also have real power and are respected. They can be described as the elite among the elites. As for the reason, I don't know why, in my predecessor's cognition, it seems to be due to the shortage of manpower due to frequent murders, so the Metropolitan Police Department carried out a reform a long time ago. And it was this reform that brought about a completely different change from the previous system. Maybe this is the difference caused by the difference in the world. In the early morning, Tang Ziyi got up early from the rental house. After washing up, he combed his hair into adult appearance, put on a suit and went to the Metropolitan Police Department to report. Because the allocated dormitory needs to be recognized today, and the rental house has not expired, so Tang Ziyi is still living in the rental house for the time being, and plans to organize the dormitory bit by bit. After all, it's a single room, and it's probably going to take a long time, so it's not enough if you don't clean it up properly. And at this moment, his destination is the police department's investigation of the first class, the forced criminal investigation of the third department. With a complicated mood that he didn't know how to describe, Tang Ziyi set off ahead of schedule with bread and milk. Although Tang Ziyi went early, he did not go to the destination to report first, but went to the single dormitory assigned by the Metropolitan Police Department. After recognizing the place, Tang Ziyi walked towards the office of the third department, where the forcible criminals of the first class searched. "Oh, you're Tang Zijun, right? You're really young and promising. Please give me more advice for a while after that." The middle-aged man named Mu Shizhen looked at Tang Ziyi with a kind expression on his face. The chubby figure, the brown trench coat, the brown hat, and the long beard all carried a familiar sense of sight. "Ah, I'm the one, please take care of the Mu Police Department." Tang Ziyi woke up from his daze and said quickly. "This is Makako Sato, my commander." After speaking, Megami introduced what he thought was a capable beauty with short hair to Tang Ziyi. "Hello, please give me more advice." Although Tang Ziyi felt stunned again, he hurriedly bowed slightly. "Don't be so polite. Maybe you will still be my boss in the future. If you have any questions, just ask, you're welcome." The short-haired beauty showed a bold smile and patted Tang Ziyi on the shoulder. "What about Takagi and Shiratori?" Officer Maguro asked Makazu Sato strangely. "Ah, someone reported to the police that there were traces of robbers and murder suspects near Rice Flower Park. The two of them went to guard." Sato Makazuko explained. "I see, Tang Zijun, I'll introduce you to the other two when they come back." Officer Mu said, "I'll get used to it this morning, but be prepared to be on duty at any time." "I see." Tang Ziyi bowed slightly. Later, with the help of Sato Miwako, Tang Ziyi put the items he was carrying at any time on the desk, and became a little dazed. "No way, the names of these Tainima is familiar. And the features are very similar too. Although I haven't seen Officer Takagi and Shiratori yet, but the images of Officer Maguro and Miwako Sato completely match. Did I travel to the world of Detective Conan?" At this moment, such a thought flashed in Tang Ziyi's mind, and he once again felt that the profession that his predecessor had chosen was simply an existence that would fit the sky. Why? Because it is very dangerous in the world of science. No matter what career you are in, no matter how many friends you have, or how happy your family is. As long as the god of death walks with his 6 relatives and doesn't recognize him. Bah, with the steps of a primary school student, then you may instantly turn friends against each other, break down your family, and even become the main material for the other party's pretend comparison. At that time, either your friend killed, or your parents suffered, and even you yourself will die at some point. Relatively speaking, as long as it is a policeman who has a relationship with him, he rarely suffers. Even if it is a little dangerous, at least it is not life-threatening, and most of them are saved. Do you think that the career chosen by the predecessor is not suitable? First of all, once the economic crisis is resolved, the economic crisis at home can also be greatly alleviated. Even if the family still has the savings earned in the past few years, it is always disturbing to suffer from losses. Originally, my parents' worst plan was to sell the hot spring, but now I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The existential crisis that followed was resolved. After all, in Kei Shui's world, although it looks extremely peaceful, it is always in danger of life. After becoming a police officer, as long as you have a good relationship with Conan, provide information without any issues, and believe in the reasoning of this kid, you can perfectly avoid the death god's harvest. And the case will be resolved by then, it can be said to be perfect. Well, the plan works. Although Tang Ziyi had imagined it well before, he needed Tang Ziyi's guess to be accurate in advance. Because of his hard work, his predecessor basically didn't pay much attention to the news around him, and he was basically preparing for the police entrance during his college days. In addition to the necessary study and preparation for the official APE Class I exam, other times in the past life, I have been exercising in the club and learning kendo. After all, this year is still quite chaotic. Although the predecessor became a policeman, he didn't want to die so early, so thanks to the efforts of the predecessor, Tang Ziyi's force value is still relatively optimistic. And although he is a very easygoing person and has a good relationship, he is basically busy with his own affairs. So Tang Ziyi can't judge the intelligence of this world from memory. But after calming down, Tang Ziyi quickly set himself a top priority, which is to find a way to determine whether this world is Conan's world. And what Tang Ziyi can do, is to wait and see what happens. Yes, that's right. After all, Tang Ziyi doesn't have a very good way to take the initiative to investigate, so he might as well just wait and see. Of course, you can buy a newspaper and read it, but none of the newspapers in the last few days have been published. Tang Ziyi has already read it through a colleague's newspaper. Anyway, with the drum washing machine physique, Tang Ziyi won't wait too long. Sighing, Tang Ziyi also felt a little unreal. The animation world of the previous life has suddenly crossed over in this life. Fortunately, I was studying at the police university before, so I was just in time for my internship and let myself pass through. Otherwise, if you wait until the middle of the internship, you will need to pay attention to many of your behaviors. At least you have to play the habits and behaviors of your predecessor for a long time. This is also good news. Oh, by the way, explain why there is still such a problem as the police university after graduating from Dongda University. First of all, the Police University and Police Academy of Neon are not schools that can provide academic diplomas, so they are completely different from ordinary schools. Most of the schools here are used to study after entering the workforce. It is not so much a school as it is more like a base used by the police for pre-job training and study. Stayed in the office for a few days. Because there was no case, Tang Ziyi gradually became familiar with the environment of the Metropolitan Police Department. In addition to this, in addition to the primary task of confirming the world situation, Tang Ziyi also made some plans for himself in the future. In the predecessor's plan, after entering the university, you can follow the steps step by step, and in the future, you can at least become a middle and high-level member of the Metropolitan Police Department, which is considered a winner in life. But compared to his predecessor, Tang Ziyi's vision is far more long-term. And he didn't want to just take the police's dead salary. In addition to being familiar with the environment these days, Tang Ziyi has not been idle, and has also learned a lot about companies and the like. But to his disappointment, those companies in the previous life basically did not appear, all appeared with specious names, and the development trajectories were completely different. Now it's impossible to buy some stocks to make money, and Tang Ziyi has no idea of doing business. First of all, Tang Ziyi is not familiar with the market of Neon, and it is still in the economic downturn, and there is no familiar company. He only knows the general direction, so he hastily went into business because he is afraid that I will become a Buddha in a cool night. Therefore, it is still a matter of honesty and promotion, and the control of Neon resources is serious, even in the previous life. For example, children who make rice also make rice balls, and children of musicians are also musicians. If you are in business, even if you have the vision of a previous life, I am afraid that you will not be able to play with those chaebol, and your hard work and success will be used as a wedding dress by others. On the contrary, if the situation in the world is confirmed, Tang Ziyi can use his identity as a policeman to make a difference. After all, whether you want to be promoted or get rich, what is nothing in front of Xiaoming? Tang Ziyi can completely use his knowledge of Conan's plot to save some chaebols and other bigwigs, and befriend them to bring benefits to himself. Even if he couldn't do business because of his identity, his family was originally a hot spring family, so he could do business, and in the future he could also use his wife's name. But the premise of all this is that this world is really the world where Conan lives, as Tang Ziyi thought. Today, Sato Maiwako is on vacation and Shiratori and Takagi have met a few days ago. The suspects have been identified in the previous robber and murder case in the past 2 days, and the two are preparing to make arrests in the past 2 days. Tang Ziyi wasn't too embarrassed to participate in this. After all, the two had been standing guard for a few days, and they had no strength in front of them. Now it's time to arrest them. So I just stayed at the Metropolitan Police Department with Officer Mumu, and while waiting, I helped Officer Mumu with chores such as copywriting. Time came to night without knowing it, and Tang Ziyi invited Officer Mumu to a nearby izakaya for dinner to thank him for taking care of him these days. If nothing else, there is really nothing to say about the character of this good old man. After the meal, Mu smiled and thanks for your hospitality, Tang Zijun. I want to thank Officer Mumu for his guidance these days. Tang Ziyi thanked him. It's getting late, I'm going back too. Hey, be careful on the road. Just as the two of them said goodbye and were about to leave, the walkie-talkie they carried with them suddenly rang. Megami Police Department. A murder case was found in a high-end apartment near Onal Town, Rice Flower Street. Please answer when you hear me. Nanny. I know, it's over. Officer Mumu had a serious expression. After replying, he immediately turned his head to look at Tang Ziyi and said, Tang Zijun, you heard it just now, you're about to appear on the scene. Hey, let's get ready now. Tang Ziyi nodded nervously. Following Officer Mumu, he immediately rushed back to the Metropolitan Police Department and took a car to the scene of the murder. While waiting for Tang Ziyi and others to arrive near the high-end apartment where the scene was located, a lot of people had gathered around to discuss. When Tang Ziyi arrived at the scene with the Mumu Police Department, what he saw was a corpse poured into a pool of blood, with a knife stuck in his back, apparently fatally wounded. Tang Ziyi was a little uncomfortable with the corpse in his eyes, but it was still not unacceptable. Or maybe people in this world are already very resistant to corpses, so Tang Ziyi just felt a little uncomfortable and then eased up. The situation is like this. According to Ms. Yoko Akino, when she returned home, the man who pushed open the door had already been killed. Tang Ziyi reported to Mumu Hui with a small notebook of records. I already understand the situation. The Mumu Police Department nodded and looked at the other man in the room without a word, so the detective who was with her at that time was. He. The man with the mustache grinned and saluted, it's me, so is Kogoro Mori. Officer Mumu. Hearing the other party's self-introduction, Tang Ziyi looked at the boy with glasses next to him, and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Confirmed, this world is really the world of Detective Conan. Oh. I really miss the time when I worked with the police officer on a case in the past. Mori Kogoro's laughter woke Tang Ziyi, who was staring at Conan in a daze. Yet. It was because of your subordinate's blessing that the case became more and more complicated. Officer Mumu slandered as he looked at the laughing Kogoro Mori. According to Kogoro Mori, Miss Yoko recently found signs of being flipped over in her home, and someone called her threateningly, sent her secretly photographed photos, and so on. In order to investigate this case, Kogoro Mori came here, but he did not expect to find the deceased when he entered the door. Excuse me, have you always turned on the heating so strongly? After listening to Kogoro Mori's words, Tang Ziyi retracted his mind and asked Yoko Akino who was beside him. Looking at Yoko Akino with a frightened look in front of him, Tang Ziyi couldn't help but secretly praised the beauty. Brown hair, milk-white skin, especially her outstanding temperament. The previous conversation also made people feel the gentle side of this beauty, even though she is a popular actress, she doesn't have the appearance of being domineering. At this moment, because of such a thing, he looks even more pitiful, so it is no wonder that he is so popular. Indeed, this room is really hot enough. Officer Mumu was fat and even more afraid of heat, and when he heard Tang Ziyi's words, he could not help shaking his clothes to cool off. No. Not so strong. Yoko Akino said suspiciously, and I remember very clearly that I had turned off the air conditioner when I went out. It's strange that I don't know that, Officer Mumu. I don't know when, Conan lying on the side of the crime scene, holding a magnifying glass from nowhere, although the traces are not obvious, but there are indeed traces of being wet with water around the entity. And look at this chair. In such a messy room, why is the chair next to the body the only one standing? Conan put his arms around his chest and looked extremely focused. Also, the heating is so strong, do you want us to mislead the time of death? No. If that's the case, wouldn't it be more effective to just soak the corpse in water? Suddenly realizing that Conan's voice was getting quieter and quieter, he mechanically turned his head a little bit, and found that Officer Mickey and Kogorum Mori were staring down at him. On the other hand, Kogorum Mori had an angry expression on his face, and his right fist was even more tightly clenched as he was about to punch the opponent. Well, Mr. Mori, the child is still young and ignorant, so don't blame him. Tang Ziyi stopped Kogorum Mori, who was about to beat Conan, and said with a smile. Who are you? Kogorum Mori asked hesitantly, looking at the young man in front of him. Ah, I'm Tang Ziyi Xianyi who recently studied with Officer Mumu. Please give me more advice. Hello, I'm Kogorum Mori, this is the little girl Malilin, and this kid is called Conan. Hearing Tang Ziyi's self-introduction, Mori Kogora also introduced Xiaolan and Conan. He looked at Conan and said with a bad expression, Tang Zijun, don't spoil the child too much, this kid is actually at the scene of the crime. Playing detective games, Actually, I really don't blame Kogorum Mori for being so angry. Only after seeing it with his own eyes can he realize how absurd it is that there is a primary school student lying beside a corpse at a crime scene. However, although he understands Kogorum Mori's mood, Tang Ziyi still chooses to hug his thighs. After all, this is the real son of the of death, so if you have a good relationship, the chance of liang is very small. Well, children are like this. Tang Ziyi picked up Conan and said with a smile, little boy, you can't be so messy, let's go to the side. Sorry for causing you trouble. Xiao Lan hurriedly stepped forward to take Conan. It's okay, in fact, what this kid said is quite reasonable. Tang Ziyi looked at Conan and said with a smile, but if you have any ideas, you can tell me directly, don't go to the scene without authorization. Hi, I see. Conan said cutely. How about it, is the fatal wound of the deceased a stab wound on the back? Not wanting to be entangled in this matter, Tang Ziyi asked the forensics staff of the forensics department after handing Conan to Xiaolan. Yes, the stab wound on the back is the fatal cause of death, I'm afraid it is considered death. The forensic officer nodded and said. Is that kitchen knife yours? Officer Maguro looked at Yoko Akino and asked, that means it's normal to have your fingerprints on the knife. Yes. Yoko Akino said uneasy. Officer, are you suspicious of Yoko? The man standing beside Yoko Akino said anxiously. Who are you? I'm Yoko's manager, Aichi Yamagishi. Facing Moku's question, the man stammered. Oh? Then have you seen the dead? Yoko Akino, Because we were too scared before, we haven't seen the corpse yet. The manager said in fear. Then please come and take a look. Officer Mumu scratched his face and said helplessly. When the two walked towards the corpse and saw the face of the deceased, the panic on their faces lingered. Ah! The two of them opened their mouths in panic. Have you seen it? Officer Mumu couldn't help asking again after seeing the reaction of the two. I'll see more clearly. The manager panicked and approached a little, but accidentally stepped on the blood on the ground and lay directly on top of the corpse. Wow, ah, ah. The manager quickly got up and shouted in horror. Hey! Don't touch the corpse! The forensic officer yelled. You reading www.yuyuganshu.com, right? I'm sorry. My foot slipped suddenly. The manager hurriedly explained as he fell to the ground. Well, Mr. Agent, I advise you not to do this. Just when Conan clearly saw what the other party seemed to have taken from the corpse and began to doubt the manager, Tang Ziyi suddenly stood up and looked at the manager. Nanny! What's going on? Officer Mumu immediately looked at Tang Ziyi and asked. Just now, when the agent was lying on the corpse, he seemed to have taken something from the corpse and put it in his pocket. That's right, Conan-kun. Ah, ah. After reacting, Conan nodded and said in a milky voice, well, standing in our direction, I just saw the uncle's movements very clearly. You can't be the culprit, hand it over. Officer Mumu yelled at the manager. The police officer next to him also had a bad expression on his face when he heard the words. No. Not me. The manager looked like he was about to cry, but under the coercive eyes, he had to take out what he had obtained from the corpse before. This is... Seeing the long hair in each other's hands, everyone's expressions couldn't help changing, and they couldn't help but look at Yoko Akino. Because the thing in the corpse's hand was actually several long hairs. At this moment, everyone had to doubt Yoko Akino. After all, this apartment was used as her secret residence. However, Yoko Akino's meaning between the lines shows that it was the first time that he saw a dead body when he returned to the residence with Kogorum Mori. Then the hair in the deceased's hand conflicted with the other party's words, which had to make everyone suspect Yoko Akino. Facing so many scrutiny eyes, Yoko Akino said with an unnatural expression, it's not me, it was like this when I came back. I didn't kill him. Then why did the deceased have your hair in his hands? Officer Mumu said in a serious tone. I don't know. I really don't know. Yoko Akino said with a broken expression. Officer Mumu wanted to ask something else, but was stopped by Tang Ziyi. He looked at Officer Mumu and said, Mumu Police Department, even if Mr. Manager acts like this, it can't explain anything, I already know the details of the case. It's the truth. Nanny. Miu Miu was surprised when he heard the words, really? Tang Zijun. Of course, I reminded Mr. Agent before, I just didn't want him to make this matter so complicated. Tang Ziyi nodded in confidence. The reason why Tang Ziyi is so confident is because he has seen this case. The case when Yoko Akino appeared on the stage was still quite impressive. After all, this is a star who has a sense of existence in the world of K-Shwet. And the reason for doing this is naturally to better express yourself and highlight your abilities. Being able to solve the case during the internship period can be regarded as a big or small credit, which will be very helpful for future promotions. Especially in this world of K-Shwet, where merit is linked to promotion, Tang Ziyi naturally has to seize the opportunity. Who is the culprit, Tang Ziyi? Miu Miu said urgently. Actually, I was reminded by Conan-kun that I had a flash of inspiration. Tang Ziyi looked at Conan and said with a smile. Conan's reminder. Everyone looked at Conan, who was being held by Xiaolan, and asked in surprise. Well, Conan said before that there were traces of water around the body. Tang Ziyi smiled and said, I was a little concerned before, so I took a closer look around there and found that there were indeed traces of water. But so what? Can the culprit be found? Officer Mumu asked in doubt. Hey, in fact, the prisoner has always been in the house. Tang Ziyi looked at the people with different expressions, pointed to the corpse lying on the floor and said, the prisoner is actually the deceased person. Si. Suicide. Everyone was surprised when they heard this. But it's impossible for me to stab the kitchen knife into my back. Mori Kogora asked. This may be his purpose. Speaking of which, I really want to thank Conan Kid. Tang Ziyi said with a smile. He said before that in such a messy room, why there was a raised chair near the body, reminded me. Tang Ziyi pointed to the fallen tables and chairs and said, look around, and then look at the chairs near the corpse, you will think it is very strange. Later, combined with the traces of water around the corpse and the high temperature in the room, I suddenly understood. If you dig a hole with ice, put the knife in it, then stand on a chair and aim at the tip of the knife and jump down, then this tricky suicide plan has been successful. Tang Ziyi pointed to the ground. I saw a dent next to the deceased before, which must be enough to prove that the other party committed suicide, and the high temperature will melt the scattered ice cubes, creating the illusion of homicide. You mean hair? Kogoro Mori said angrily, in order to successfully blame Miss Yoko, this is too much. That's right, she must have found her hair from the comb in this room and jumped down. Officer Mumu's expression was also somewhat angry. That's why I said, Mr. Agent, don't do some misleading actions at the crime scene. Tang Ziyi looked at Yamagishi Eei and smiled. Hug, sorry, Yoko. But why did he commit suicide in Miss Yoko Akino's house? Mumu asked with a puzzled face. I'll ask Ms. Yoko Akino and this manager about this. When the two of them saw the expression of the deceased before, it didn't look like they didn't know each other. We naturally don't know each other. Maybe he's a big fan of Yoko. It's not surprising that such a guy would do anything, right? The manager said with a panicked expression. I know that person. Yoko Akino seemed determined and said, no. Not only no, that person is, I had a boyfriend in high school. Yoko. The manager yelled with a panicked expression. I'm sorry. Eiichi, but I can't hide it any longer. And I also want to know why he committed suicide in my room. Could it be because you broke with him, so he was in revenge? No, it didn't matter. He broke up with him in high school. Yoko Akino said with a complicated expression, after I became famous, he often came to harass me and wanted me to come back to him. But I really want to know why he committed suicide here. After Yoko Akino revealed her relationship with the deceased, in order to solve the final mystery of the case and to confirm the cause of the other party's suicide, everyone started an investigation again. Later, with the help of the earrings found by Conan, everyone found another key figure, Yuko Aizawa. Under the pressure and the fact that she was clearly not familiar with the room, but knew about the strangely shaped lighter and the horse's feet in the toilet, Aizawa Yuko finally revealed the truth. It turns out that Miss Yoko entrusted Kogoro Mori to be the culprit behind the incident. Because she saw Yoko who was indifferent, she thought that the means of making phone calls and sending photos were ineffective, so she stole Yoko's keys in the lounge. As a result, after she came to the room at noon, the deceased suddenly came in and knocked her down, trying to use force. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Under desperate resistance, Aizawa Yuko finally escaped from the room. Because Miss Yuko and Yoko looked very similar, and she was wearing sunglasses at that time, the deceased regarded her as Yoko. Yuko Aizawa, who screamed and resisted desperately after seeing this strange man, deeply pierced the heart of the deceased named Tengjong because of her reaction. From love to hate, the love for Yoko Akino turned into despair and hatred at that moment, so he thought of such a means of revenge. Later, in the agent's confession, Miss Yoko finally learned that the name of Tengjong who got rid of her was because she chose to break up with him at the request of her agent, Eiichi. And the diary he found in the room recorded his distressed thoughts that he couldn't forget after breaking up. This tragedy, which was intertwined with lies, misunderstandings, and accidents, came to an end. And Tang Ziyi was also appreciated by the police officer Mumu. Later, Tang Ziyi also got thanks from Miss Yoko Akino for solving this case. Tang Ziyi got a signature from the other party and exchanged contact information with each other. Perhaps it was because Tang Ziyi had stopped him from making a mistake and cleared his suspicions with Yoko, but the manager did not stop the two from exchanging contact information. Maybe it's because of the idea of making friends with Tang Ziyi. After all, if there is a police officer with outstanding ability, it can still help a lot. After all, celebrities can have all kinds of problems. Of course, there may have been Mumu who had revealed the reason for his police rank when he praised him before. And Tang Ziyi introduced his hot spring to Yoko Akino, so that she could take friends to relax with her when she had time. Anyway, I can advertise by the way, right? After the case was over, Tang Ziyi brought Yoko Akino, Kogoro Mori, and others back to the Metropolitan Police Department to take notes. This is a procedure that must be passed. After all, the deceased was related to Yoko Akino and committed suicide in her room. As the owner of the room, it is natural to go there. As the case solver, Kogoro Mori naturally had to go there, and surely Miss Yoko Akino would not want to stay in the room where her ex-boyfriend died. Fortunately, although the agent made a wrong move, he was soon discovered by Tang Ziyi. He was a passerby, so he didn't have to follow him. Tang Ziyi made it easy for him to do his work. After all, something like this happened, the room can't be occupied for the time being, and it's getting late again, so I must find a place like a hotel to stay. Miss Akino, I'll take you back. Tang Ziyi said with a smile after making a note for Yoko Akino. It just so happened that Kogoro Mori also completed the transcript, and Tang Ziyi filled out the application form for the use of the police car, and was ready to send a few people away. First, Kogoro Mori, the protagonist and the heroine were sent back to the Mori detective office. After writing down the location, Tang Ziyi started the car again. Miss Akino, I don't know where the manager has booked you. It's Hotel Lagertzella in Shinjuku, Yoko Akino said. I see. Tang Ziyi nodded. After all, the university was in this place, and he had all the memories, so naturally he wouldn't know the way. For a while, the car fell silent. Just like that, the silence in the car came to an end. Because of Yoko Akino's identity, the police car applied for was just an ordinary black car, so it didn't attract the attention of the people around. Akino Yoko put on a hat and mask in the car, dressed up and prepared to get off. Miss Akino, please don't blame yourself too much. It's not all your fault. There are various reasons that led to such a tragedy. Just as Akino Yoko opened the car door, Tang Ziyi still opened his mouth to comfort him, although he didn't know how effective such comfort would be. Thank you. After getting off the bus, Yoko Akino bowed slightly to Tang Ziyi and said, Hot Spring, I will go there when I have time. Welcome, please enjoy it when the time comes. Tang Ziyi smiled and drove away. Time passed, and before you knew it, a week had passed, and you gradually became familiar with the daily routine of working in the Metropolitan Police Department. In the morning, Tokyo time, at 6:30, at the rental house where Tang Ziyi was, the TV was broadcasting the morning news. Yesterday, a murder case occurred in Gunma Prefecture. Judging from the items left at the scene, it was actually proved to be 42-year-old Genkin Masaki. The police believe that the possibility of homicide is quite high and is currently under investigation. As expected of Conan's World, you can find the murder case when you wake up early in the morning. Tang Ziyi walked out of the bathroom and complained after taking a shower. She took out milk and bread and started to eat breakfast, and then went to the Metropolitan Police Department to go to work as usual. But today Tang Ziyi met an unexpected person at the door. No, it should be a person who should not appear but is in line with common sense. Mori Kogora, he was the one Tang Ziyi met at the door. Morning, Detective Maori, do you know why you came to the Metropolitan Police Department so early today? Tang Ziyi greeted and asked with a smile. But Tang Ziyi already had the answer in his heart. Since this is the case, Tang Ziyi has to mix it up even more. During this week, Tang Ziyi also discovered a lot of things that were different from before. Even if he didn't really live in this era, he had watched a lot of reasoning dramas about this era in his previous life, and he didn't know anything about the Metropolitan Police Department, but it wasn't like that. In general, the treatment has improved a lot, which is a good thing. And more importantly, promotions in this world are related to their own abilities, even the elites in the professional group are the same, they will be promoted faster and so on. Therefore, it is very necessary to have a good relationship with Mori Kogoro, no, with Conan. After all, Tang Ziyi is an ordinary reasoning enthusiast, so let him be a detective. To be honest, it's a bit embarrassing. If it wasn't for the fact that he was in the vocational group, and the economy was in recession, Tang Ziyi would have considered whether to do other jobs. And discovering the appearance of Conan and others is also one of the reliances that give Tang Ziyi the confidence to do his job well. After all, in terms of various factors, it can be considered an advantage it's you, criminal Tang Ziyi. Kogoro Mori turned his head to look at Tang Ziyi, his expression was a little unpleasant. I wonder if you know that there was a murder incident reported in the news this morning. Hey, I know, it's called Negishi Masaki. Tang Ziyi nodded and said, it happened at the fire festival in Chigi village, Gunma County. That's what I came here for. Kogoro Mori looked very serious, actually. I've been following him for the past 3 days. You mean? Yes, I was following him until yesterday. Nanny. Tang Ziyi looked surprised on the surface, but he was really not surprised inside. After all, Kogoro Mori. It's not surprising what type of murder happened to him, right? Afterwards, Tang Ziyi invited Kogoro Mori into the Metropolitan Police Department. Yu read www.yuyugonshu.com and reported the incident to Officer Mumu, which immediately attracted great attention. Then, according to the investigation, a suspect was found. Abe Toyo. The deceased was insured with a death insurance of 500 million yuan before his death, but the beneficiary of that high amount of insurance money was only his friend. This is very suspicious no matter how you think about it. Mr. Abe Feng. You asked me to follow him. And why is the beneficiary of the insurance money not his family but you? In a conversation room, Kogoro Mori was shouting and asking the suspect who was notified by Tang Ziyi to come. He wears glasses and a suit and looks polite. He is about 40 years old and looks like a very gentle middle-aged man. Abe Feng smiled and said calmly, hey, it's just a game between us. Nanny. I've known him since college, and we've known him for almost 20 years. Abe Feng explained without the slightest panic. Then one day when we were drinking together, he said whether we should make a bet to see who has the longest life. Then I agreed, and the bet was 500 million yuan, and I was at his invitation. Officer Mumu was a little incredulous, that's why you both insure each other. Yes, but I never imagined that the winner would be decided in only 3 months. Abe Feng said with a wry smile. On the other hand, Tang Ziyi watched Abe Feng's performance without the slightest fluctuation in his heart. For Tang Ziyi, who was still chasing Conan before crossing, some old routines in Conan's world were so familiar they couldn't be more familiar. Even Tang Ziyi doesn't need to target other suspects, he can be sure that the culprit is the man in front of him. In the room, the questioning continued. After Toyo Abe explained the reason for the large amount of insurance between the two, Officer Mumu and Kogoro Mori had a deeper suspicion of Toyo Abe. Then, Mr. Toyo Abe, why did you entrust the Maori detective to follow the dead? Officer Mumu asked again. That's because he came to talk to me recently and said, someone wants to assassinate him, and he might be killed right away. Killed? Yes. Abe Feng sighed, I thought he was just joking at first, but he really doesn't look like. Just in case, I entrusted Detective Maori to help me follow him for 3 days. Kogoro Mori clenched his fists tightly, and his expression of gnashing his teeth seemed extremely angry. Obviously, the anger of knowing who the suspect is, but finding out that he was used by the prisoner, and the arrogant attitude of the other party, made Kogoro Mori extremely angry. I'm sorry, I still have a lot of things to do. Don't look at me like this. In fact, I'm also the president of a small company. I have a lot of things every day, and I'm very busy. Abe Feng opened the meeting room, turned around and said with a smile, I hope you can find his murderer sooner. Humph, don't worry, if you find it, I will notify you as soon as possible. Kogoro Mori said in a bad tone. Ha! Abe Feng sneered after hearing Kogoro Mori's words, then turned around and smiled politely again, then I'm looking forward to. Mr. Detective. Damn it, apart from him, I really can't think of anyone else as the prisoner, but he has proof somewhere else. Officer Mumu looked at Abe Feng who was leaving, and his expression was also bad. And it's quite a perfect proof. Tang Ziyi shrugged, looked at Officer Mumu and said, the Mumu Police Department, I wonder if I can investigate this case with Detective Maori. Well, I'll leave this case to you and the Maori detective. Let's learn some experience from the Maori detective. Officer Mumu thought for a while, and found that there was nothing to do recently, so he decided to hand over the case to Tang Ziyi. Although this case happened in Gunma Prefecture, the deceased and the suspect were both in Tokyo, and the witness was an acquaintance of Kogoro Mori, so there was nothing wrong with asking Tang Ziyi to help. It's too suspicious, the murderer is definitely not wrong. Until he walked out of the Metropolitan Police Department, Kogoro Mori scolded and looked dissatisfied. Ah! Dad is out. An officer Tang Ziyi. Mao Lilan looked at Tang Ziyi who was following behind Kogoro Mori, a little surprised. Hello, Maorizan. Tang Ziyi greeted politely. Hello, criminal Tang Ziyi. Mao Lilan bowed slightly and smiled, are you investigating this case with your father? Well, I'll trouble you later. Tang Ziyi nodded. When Tang Ziyi was questioning Kogoro Mori before, he had carefully searched his brain, but he didn't get any relevant impression, which not only made him feel a little pity. After all, if it was a case that had a deep impression on his mind, then he would be able to quickly find clues and catch the culprit. What do you think, Tang Ziyi criminal? Maori Kogoro looked at the contemplative Tang Ziyi, and said angrily, I was thinking about it at the time, just following that man, but he could earn 500,000 in 3 days. No matter how rich a guy is, the reward for stalking like this is too high. Speaking of which, thinking of Toyo Abe's confident face made Kogoro Mori even more unhappy. Then why don't you just arrest him? Xiaolan wondered. Although we have locked the suspect now, there is no evidence at present. On the contrary, the other party has sufficient alibi. Tang Ziyi heard the words and said to the two, and the other party's alibi was provided by the Maori detective. Speaking of this, Tang Ziyi looked at Kogoro Mori and said, Detective Maori, I don't know if I can tell you. You follow his specific situation, and let's sort out the current information. Mori Kogoro recalled for a while and said, the deceased was found at the fire festival in Chigi village, Gunma County, and I followed him before his death, that is, on Wednesday night. In other words, it started from Wednesday evening to Thursday evening anyway. Then the person you suspected, Dad, started at a certain time of the day. Xiaolan made such a judgment subconsciously after listening to it. Impossible. Mori Kogoro gritted his teeth again when he said this, that guy has been traveling from Wednesday morning to Friday night, and he went with his company's employees. Oh! Xiaolan said with some doubts, then why do you still insist that he is a prisoner, Dad? Hey, that's because my detective has a unique sixth sense. Kogoro Mori boasted shamelessly. Ah! Really? Xiaolan had a pia-eyed expression, and she didn't know how to complain about such a confident father. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Actually, it's also because the other party has a strong motive to kill. Tang Ziyi returned to his senses and smiled, and explained to Xiaolan, the two of them have mutually insured a high amount of 500 million yen in insurance. From this aspect, the other party does have a strong murderous intention. So that's the case. Xiaolan nodded knowingly. And Tang Ziyi also sorted out what Kogoro Mori said in his notebook. Judging from the current situation, Mori Kogoro followed from Monday to Wednesday, and the deceased died on Thursday. As for Toyo Abe, he was traveling from Wednesday to Friday, which means that on Wednesday, the deceased was still alive. By Thursday, Toyo Abe had already gone on a trip, and he had no time to kill. So that's the case? Dad is really, don't explain it and don't bother me like that. Xiaolan said a little angrily. No, he really relies on his feelings. Times two beside them, two young men, one big and one small, tacitly complained in their hearts at the same time. After returning to the Mori Detective Agency, Tang Ziyi also took out the Kyushu travel itinerary and his commemorative photos provided by Toyo Abe, and started screening with Kogoro Mori. However, Dad. Xiaolan looked at the two people who were arranging the photos and said, if you really want to kill people, then as long as the person is in the country, you can achieve the goal in a short time. After listening to Xiaolan's words, Tang Ziyi couldn't help but nodded. After all, the total area of the entire Neon is only about 370,000 square kilometers. In a larger country, it is almost equivalent to the area of a province. Under such circumstances, it is entirely possible for Abe to travel to other places to kill in a short period of time, and then travel back to Kyushu. On Wednesday night, I was playing mahjong with the staff overnight. Thursday at noon is to take a bus to go sightseeing indoors. At night, we drink together and play until midnight. With the screening of Tang Ziyi and Mori Kogoro, Abe's itinerary was very perfect. And in the more suspicious period from Wednesday night to Thursday evening, when there is a high probability of the murder, his alibi is particularly sufficient. As for the time spent alone, it can be said that the amount of time spent alone is pitiful. It was only on Thursday morning that I slept in an extra 2 hours. At this moment, Conan surrounded him with a grin, making the irritable Kogoro Mori instantly want to get angry. But before Mori Kogoro got angry, Tang Ziyi took the initiative to greet him and asked, Conan, what are you laughing at? Because these photos are very strange. Conan pointed at them with a naive tone and smiled, look carefully, every time this uncle takes a photo, he will take it with the clock. Yep. Mori Kogoro looked at these photos with a gloomy expression, it's really unnatural, as if it was deliberately taken for alibi. However, just when Mori Kogoro looked at Conan with some doubts, and when Conan was a little flustered and prepared to make trouble and divert his attention, Tang Ziyi took the initiative to speak. Detective Maori, I don't know the photos you took when you followed the dead, can you let me take a look? Can. Then Conan-kun, can you come and help organize these photos? Tang Ziyi invited with a smile. Hai Conan hurriedly evacuated from Kogoro Mori's side, and began to help Tang Ziyi sort out the photos taken by Kogoro Mori while he was following him. Criminal Tang Ziyi, this kid is very tricky, you have to pay attention. Kogoro Mori looked at Conan who ran over obediently and said angrily. It's all right, isn't Conan-kun's hint just now very useful? Tang Ziyi waved his hand. Children view problems from a different angle than adults. Maybe they can find something that we didn't notice. After finishing speaking, Tang Ziyi invited Xiaolan to help as well, as a cover to avoid Conan's suspicion. After all, the real son in this world is very sensitive. Tang Ziyi doesn't want to be misunderstood by him. After all, if your own reasoning ability is not good, then at least you have to provide the boss with favorable clues and conditions. But at the same time, Tang Ziyi didn't give up thinking. After all, these are the things he will often face in the future, and he also wants to learn more experience in handling cases from it as soon as possible. Speaking of which, Tang Ziyi had to thank himself again for coming to the world of Conan. After watching more than 1,000 episodes of Conan, active or passive, I can always sum up a lot of routines. For example, if you want to determine whether the alibi presented by the suspect is his own, there is a very common method. That is to determine what the person's dominant hand is. Generally, the less careful prisoners will make major mistakes in this place. Based on this, Tang Ziyi first began to compare the dominant hand of the deceased in the photo. After checking this, I really found something. In the photos on Monday and Tuesday, the dominant hand of the deceased was the right hand, but on Wednesday, the dominant hand of the deceased became the left. Tang Ziyi informed Kogoro Mori of the discovery, and called police officer Mumu. This discovery can be said to directly overturn the other party's perfect alibi, confirming that Toyo Abe is suspected of murder. But what followed was a piece of bad news from Officer Mumu, which made Tang Ziyi frown. After hanging up the phone, Tang Ziyi said solemnly to Mori Kogoro, Officer Mumu has already investigated that Abe Feng's company owes 300 million in debt, and I'm afraid this is his motive for the murder. Moreover, he has temporarily handed over the company to others, saying that he will travel abroad for a period of time, and the departure time is 9 o'clock this evening. What is traveling abroad? Maori Kogoro punched the table angrily. That guy must plan to use the insurance money paid by the deceased to repay the debt, and then flee abroad with the remaining 200 million. There are only 3 hours left now. Conan looked at the clock, his expression changed greatly. It would be troublesome for him to escape abroad, so he had to find a way to confess. Thinking of this, Conan began to act. Afterwards, Kogoro Mori received a call from police officer Megami, saying that Abe's alibi was overturned, and Kogoro Mori hurried to the airport. Although Tang Ziyi knew that it was Conan's ghost, he didn't do anything, and went to the airport from Mori Detective Office. Hey, you are not allowed to interfere with our work, you know. Kogoro Mori looked at Xiolan and Conan and told him when he arrived at the airport. Hey, I know there are so many people at the airport, it's not easy to find the police officers. Just as Mori Kogoro was looking for Officer Mumu, he sneaked out. What Conan didn't notice was that Tang Ziyi also followed. Not long after, the announcement sounded from the airport, all passengers, please note that Mr. Abe, the passenger who took the 99th flight, is opposite the airport. Mr. Negishi Masaki is waiting for you there. Repeat again. The boarding time has come. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. But after hearing the broadcast, Abe came to the parking lot alone, constantly looking around. Uncle, you are so smart. The sudden sound of a child's voice made Toyo Abe turn his head sharply to look at the source of the sound, but he didn't see any figure. Who is it? There was no response to Abe's questioning, and some were just unintentional reasoning. Negishi Masaki actually died on Tuesday night, the day before your trip. Then you find a person who looks similar to Masaki Negishi and pretend to be him, and let Detective Maori follow him. This is for Detective Maori to help you prove that Masaki Negishi is still alive on Wednesday. Everything after that was as you planned, and the body was found on Thursday evening. After the body was burned, there was no way to determine the time of death. The police could only infer that Masaki Negishi died from Wednesday night to Thursday evening based on the testimony of Detective Maori. Finally, Uncle, you came back on Friday pretending to be completely ignorant, and your alibi is established. How is it? Am I right? Child. Abe followed the sound to find the source, but to his surprise, what appeared in front of him was a little boy sitting on the front of the car. I've just contacted Mr. Police, although it's just my own reasoning. Conan jumped off the front of the car and said with a smile, but who made you pick the wrong substitute target? Abe Feng was startled when he heard the words, what does this mean? Conan smiled and said meaningfully, it means. Embarrassing, I used voice input, the speed is fast, but I can't notice the typo. Facing the question of the murderer, Toyo Abe, Conan chuckled and said, although you lied to the detective, the photo will not help you lie. The man who looks very similar to Negishi Masaki has one obvious difference from Negishi Masaki. He is left-handed. Conan looked up at Abe Feng and said in cute words, go and surrender, Mr. Police will be here later. Ha, ha ha ha. It's amazing, this reasoning is too wonderful. Toyo Abe laughed and said, that's right, the person who killed Masaki Negishi was me, Toyo Abe. He squatted down, touched Conan's head with a smug smile, but I won't surrender. I'm going to live a leisurely life abroad. Hey? But uncle, did you confess your crime to me just now? Conan asked innocently. Haha. Do you think anyone will believe what the child says? But, uncle. Conan took out a small tape recorder from his pocket and winked at Abe Feng. If you said it, the police would definitely believe it. The one who killed Masaki Negishi was me, Abe Feng. His proud words sounded in the tape recorder, and these words were clearly recorded by the tape recorder. Don't underestimate me, you brat. Abe Feng turned around and grabbed Conan's neck. He said with a grim expression, my company is on the verge of bankruptcy, do you know how I feel? Ha ha ha, it's better to lie than to be lied to. That guy is too stupid. He didn't know any suspicion, so he promised me to get insurance, and then stepped into the death I prepared for him without knowing it. Trap. Abe Feng looked crazy, and the hands that grabbed Conan's neck made him breathless. Bang! Suddenly, Abe Feng felt a sudden kick on his back, and he staggered and let go of his hands involuntarily. Before he could react, a super loud slap slapped his face, directly slapping him with a dazed expression. Abe Feng realized that he had been attacked, and immediately struggled with his hands to counterattack indiscriminately, but the next moment he felt a pain in his abdomen. Yuck! Abe Toyo retched for a while, his body involuntarily softened, and the moment his soft abdomen was hit hard, he lost his ability to resist. This is really dangerous, Conan-kun, don't be so messy next time. Tang Ziyi took out the handcuffs, arrested Abe Feng, and smiled at the front-loading washing machine with a panicked face. Criminal Tang Ziyi. You, why are you here? No, when did you come? Conan stammered as he reasoned calmly before. It's been here since the beginning. Tang Ziyi took a breath and pulled Abe Feng from the ground to calm down his nervousness. To be honest, this was the first time he had fought someone as an adult, and the opponent was a murderer. Although he had systematic training on how to subdue a prisoner, it was completely useless just now. What played a role was exactly the wild way of high school teenagers fighting frivolously. The kick in the back was a sneak attack, and then the slap was soft control, which could quickly make people confused. After that, the knee slammed into the opponent's stomach, which was the key blow to make the opponent lose the ability to fight back. The moves that were systematically trained before taking office are completely useless. After realizing this, Tang Ziyi has already made up his mind to strengthen his combat power. Don't think about the Special A that was officially rated as the highest combat power by Jing Jijhen, and the same is true for Toru Amuro and Shoaki Akai, whose combat power reaches the official A level. Xiaolan and Hai, who were rated as B. Cough cough, forget it, let's ignore these perverts. Tang Ziyi feels that he has to reach the C level, and it's not a problem to deal with 2 or 3 people. Otherwise, in this world that has evolved into an action blockbuster year by year, Tang Ziyi feels that his life will be at risk at any time. You. Looking at Tang Ziyi, who was looking down at him in deep thought, Conan mistakenly thought that Tang Ziyi was thinking about his own problems, and he couldn't help panicking for a while. I wanted to find an excuse, but I didn't know how to explain it, so I was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. After all, this is a case of being caught. Conan's intermittent words made Tang Ziyi wake up from his contemplation. The panicked expression on his face and the unconscious waving of his hands in the air all showed how flustered Conan was at the moment. Conan. Hi. Hearing Tang Ziyi's words, Conan immediately stood up. You can't do that. Tang Ziyi instructed with a come here expression, from the first time I saw you, I thought you were a very smart child. Such a small insight is very keen, and he can have such a careful reasoning, and actually find the culprit. Ha, that's all. Conan's calm state of mind has long since disappeared at this moment. His brain started to work frantically. He wanted to find an excuse, but he couldn't think of an excuse that could fool Tang Ziyi. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Don't say it. Tang Ziyi's serious expression made Conan's heart sink. Is it exposed? Conan's mind couldn't help but flash such thoughts, but he heard Tang Ziyi's words in his ears. You kid, you're a genius. Tang Ziyi frowned and looked at Conan with a serious expression. You're very good at reasoning, and your thinking is very mature, just like when I was a child. What? I was like this when I was a kid. My mind is much more mature than ordinary people, but compared to your talent in reasoning, my talent is all about learning. Tang Ziyi smiled and said, at that time, just in time for the recession, my hot springs had no customers at all, so I could only eat at my old expense. At that time, I begged my parents to help me study and go to university, and I finally proved myself with excellent grades. The same was true when I was in college. After graduation, I immediately became a member of the career group. Tang Ziyi looked at the confused Conan, crouched down and smiled and said, how about it? It's incredible. Compared to those of the same age who lived blindly and happily, I decided very early on what I wanted. And I used to be like this when I was a kid, but mature advice was taken as a joke by my parents, right? Not to mention, in such a special place as a murder case, I am afraid that even an ordinary adult cannot find the culprit, and there are very few useful suggestions for children, let alone a child. Ignoring the stunned Conan, Tang Ziyi finally stopped after finishing the sentence with a eloquent eloquence. Looking at Conan's dazed little eyes, Tang Ziyi couldn't help but give himself a compliment in his heart. Fudge, Conan's big battle, a great success. Hey, did you listen to me, kid? Tang Ziyi pretended to be unhappy and rubbed Conan's little head vigorously. Well? Conan tilted his head, looking dumbfounded. Although your child has amazing reasoning ability, you are still a child after all. It doesn't matter if you don't understand these things. Tang Ziyi wanted to laugh when he looked at the other party's confused appearance, but because he was still acting, he said seriously with a very serious expression, but listen, I know that it may be because you think that no one believes in a child's reasoning. Leads to such a reckless move that makes you choose to go it alone. But you are not allowed to do this in the future. This incident has proved your ability. If you have anything, you can consult with me, and I will listen to your opinion. If you are interested in these matters, I will help you, but you are not allowed to act alone, understand? I know. Conan stammered in agreement, but in fact his brain was stunned. Who I am? Where am I? What am I going to do? Oh yes, I was discovered and I was about to make an excuse, but why did Officer Tang Ziyi speak for a long time? I understand those words individually, but together, how can they make me look dazed? When Tang Ziyi finished his lecture, Conan looked like he had recovered. The gradually functioning brain finally digested what Tang Zhe said before. It's very dangerous. Criminal Tang Ziyi seems to regard me as a young and mature boy like him. After Conan realized this, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. That's right, how could ordinary people think that I was rejuvenated from a high school student? But this may be because when Tang Ziyi was a child, his mature speech was not taken seriously, so he thought about it so much. Var. Thinking of this, Conan couldn't help but feel fortunate and lamented his good luck. You are still a child and can't protect yourself. Just like this time, even if you find the culprit, you don't have the ability to defend yourself, and you will easily encounter danger. Tang Ziyi repeated the warning again, next time, if you find anything, you can talk to me. Have you heard? I will take your opinion seriously. Hey, I see. Conan looked like a good baby, and then he said, then my. Don't worry, I will help you keep it a secret. After all, many mortals don't understand the world of our talented people, don't they? Tang Ziyi said, pretending to be someone from the past. Thank you. Conan was relieved when he heard Tang Ziyi say that. And it seems that, being discovered by Tang Ziyi, it cannot be said that there is no gain. After all, it's good to have someone who can communicate on an equal footing with mature thinking, without being malicious and cute. Especially since he is a police officer, whether he is tracking down criminals or investigating intelligence, he can give Conan a lot of convenience. Being discovered this time, it is more like a misfortune and a blessing in disguise, a feeling of a blessing in disguise. And more importantly, Conan feels that in the future, if he is running around on the scene, there will probably be fewer cases of being beaten by Uncle Mori. And when the two of them finished their conversation, Tang Ziyi called Officer Mumu, and the three of them came in a hurry. Hey! You little brat! You're running around again, are you causing trouble for Officer Tang Ziyi? Kogoro Mori didn't even understand the situation at the scene, and he punched Conan in the head when he went up. No, Conan helped a lot this time. Tang Ziyi hurried forward, took out the rhetoric that the two had discussed before, and told the three of them. You mean this kid, let Abe Feng confess? Mori Kogoro said suspiciously. Well, thanks to Conan this time, when Conan came up with this idea, it really surprised me. Tang Ziyi smiled, but this kid is really smart, and he is not afraid at all. At that time, after seeing that the object of reasoning was a child, Abe said everything and recorded it on the tape recorder. After speaking, Tang Ziyi said a little apologetically, I'm sorry, Officer Mumu, the situation is urgent and I didn't have time to report it. It's all right, just follow the right, and if it's not like this, maybe Abe will run away. Officer Mumu is indeed a good police officer with justice. Not only is he not angry, but he is quite generous. Of course, it is also possible that the other party hates too much, and it is indeed because of the urgency of time. Compared with letting the fugitive escape, these are not unacceptable. Wow, Konankin is amazing. Xiaolan smiled and patted Conan's head, I didn't expect to have the talent for acting. No. Conan waved his hands again and again, I just read it according to the manuscript that Officer Tang Ziyi wrote for me, and the reasoning is due to Officer Tang Ziyi. Yes, that's it, let the credit come more violently. Tang Ziyi had a calm look on his face, but in fact his heart had already blossomed with joy. This is also Tang Ziyi's thoughtful choice after watching Conan choose to act alone, including how to explain Conan's secret after discovering it. Tang Ziyi thought of it very intimately for Conan. That self-improvement, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is actually very logical, but the truth is more like a story from the Arabian Nights. In reality, many things are like this. Dramatic facts are not believed by people. On the contrary, people believe the false ones that conform to the logic of people's imagination. After escorting Abe Feng into the police car, Tang Ziyi and Officer Mumu said goodbye to Kogoro Mori and the three of them, and escorted the prisoner back to the police station. Ha, this guy finally subverted the law, you little brat did a good job. Mori Kogoro rubbed the dog's head angrily, with a foul expression, it's a good thing to celebrate, let's eat something good today. Then I want to eat sushi. Xiaolan said happily, I haven't eaten it for a long time. Hey? No, Odin is better. It's very suitable for drinking. Kogoro Mori resisted when he heard the words, and when he mentioned drinking, his face turned into a rippling expression. Yo xi, then let's raise our hands to vote. Xiaolan looked down at Conan with a smirk, you want to eat sushi too, right? Yep. In the face of his wife's request for cooperation, Conan decisively went up to assist. 2-1, that's sushi, Xiaolan said with a smile. Hey? My Odin. Although Kogoro Mori was reluctant, he happily agreed to his daughter's request. On the other hand, Tang Ziyi made a transcript for Abe Feng. This matter is over, and the rest needs to be handed over to the prosecutor's office. It is no longer Tang Ziyi and the others' responsibilities. All they need to do is arrest the prisoner. After the incident, within a few days of Anshen, Tang Ziyi received a call for help from Conan. But when Tang Ziyi rushed to the scene in a hurry, the case was over, leaving Tang Ziyi speechless for a while.